Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another cryptocurrency video. I want to apologize for the quiet recording environment I'm in today. I'm speaking very quietly because I'm in a suboptimal location for recording. As I said in my recent community post, I'm on a business trip at the moment, and so I haven't been able to have access to my computer regularly. I'm filming on an iPad right now, actually, which is the first for me on this YouTube channel. But I want to get an update out. It's been about 7 days now since I made my last video, so I figured it's time to get an update on the market. Now, luckily, in my absence here, not really too much has gone on, but I want to discuss the main two structures that we're seeing in the crypto market right now. And one of the structures is actually back here, a prior structure we saw in 2024, and one of them is what we're seeing right now, a large descending wedge formation. I think there is a major connection between these two structures. I think we're seeing something very similar right now to what we saw back here in 2024. I'll explain that in full today. I'll also explain a recent breakdown on a short-term level that we've seen within our larger descending wedge. We have a smaller ascending wedge which is broken down, which is going to give us a pretty good influence or a pretty good idea of what's going to be happening in the short-term price action, which could actually be leaning more bearish. So we'll get into all of that today. Just before we get into it here, obviously, if you're in the cryptocurrency market, you're going to need an exchange to trade on. And that's why I advertise the Bitunix exchange. I do this on my own free will. I haven't signed any contracts with them. They don't pay me any money. The only thing they give me is a referral link to give to you guys. So if you sign up with that referral link down below, you'll gain access to Bitunix. Not only a regular access, but a regular access with the bonuses, which are a 15% trading fee discount attached to your account for life. Gaining access to an exchange, guys, that is global, non-KYC, with no VPN required, that has never been hacked before. These are very key points, very important points. You don't want an unreliable exchange. You want an exchange that's been historically reliable and with every intention to keep it that way. And that's what Bitunix is. So very low trading fees, made it even lower with my link down below. Go ahead and use that link to sign up, help out the channel, and help out yourself by getting on a solid exchange. Right, let's get into the content. Bitcoin previously had a very influential macro support range, which you can see here in white. Now, these two white lines were important. They stemmed backwards from prior cycles. It was not a regular horizontally based support range. These two lines stem backwards from 2017, as you can see, and 2021 respectively, cutting right through the price action and forming a very important consolidation zone. Unfortunately, Bitcoin broke below that consolidation zone in a pretty brutal manner. Bitcoin actually witnessed a very intense compression between the Gaussian channel line, which you can see in solid green and red, and the blue line on the screen here, which is the pi cycle indicator, a very influential indicator for predicting tops and bottoms on Bitcoin, but used in a very different manner. When it came to this compression, you see it just acted as short-term support there during that compression, and during that 3-week compression, the price obviously pented up a lot of momentum, and that momentum shifted dramatically to the downside. We had the news coming from the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, which led to a short-term bounce, but it was unsustained, and ever since then, we've just been continuing in this local downwards trend. It's been a bit of a mess, to be honest, because within this local downwards trend that we've formed here, we've entered a price range that we haven't really spent much time in on Bitcoin. I've discussed all of this extensively. I'm recapping here, but this price range between around 74,000, which stems from the peak of our prior macro range, okay, which I've drawn this pink line from, to around 86,000, 85,000. There's really not much historical data in that price region, which limited our capacity to make any sort of short-term predictions. But now, finally, with the historical data building and with our price consolidating within this region more and more, we're getting more and more data in this price region. We're able to identify some levels now, and that's what we're doing in this video. So before we go ahead and jump into the short term, I just want to give you a very good way of thinking about what's actually happening here on Bitcoin and the macro. Just making one thing very clear off the bat here. I do see this still as a correction within a larger macro bull market, and I'll continue to hold that position until Bitcoin proves me wrong by breaking below this support zone right here between 70,000 to 74,000, which is our prior macro consolidation resistance that lasted for about 8 months throughout 2024. I see that as a very, very strong level. It's supported by important indicators like the Gaussian channel on the weekly chart, which we've discussed so extensively at this point. I'm not going to bring it up again, but essentially the Gaussian channel on the weekly chart is supporting that price region. Dropping below that price region will line up with a drop below the Gaussian channel center line and below most of Bitcoin's indicators that it has remaining as support. I would not like to see that at all. I think below that point, below 70,000, there is very, very, very little opportunity for recovery on Bitcoin, and so we need to remain above it. But with that said, given the fact we are currently above it, I don't see the situation as critical yet for Bitcoin, especially considering this. We are in a bullish macro structure right now. I know we've seen a breakdown. I know we've seen a shift in momentum to the downside. I know in the medium term, ever since February, January, we've been seeing lower highs and lower lows. That's all a little bit concerning, but it's important to put it into context with the structural formation we're forming here. We're forming a descending wedge formation, which is actually a bullish structure. It reminds me a lot, and this is the main point here, it reminds me of a lot of what we saw in 2024. In 2024, we rejected from major resistance, okay, and we went downwards for months and months and months on end. There were lower highs, there were lower lows. A lot of people were getting very scared, very intimidated by the price action, including myself at times. But it's important to note that we ended up breaking to the upside because overall, even though it was a downwards trend, we still had the bullish macro pattern, which was the descending channel formation, which was holding up the Bitcoin structure and giving it hope for a bounce. Now, it's for that reason that as long as Bitcoin remains within this descending wedge formation, and by the way, breaking the descending wedge formation would line up with the break of our critical bull market support level. And so basically, if we break the wedge to the downside, it's over because we lose 70,000 and we lose the weekly chart caution channel as well. Therefore, as I was saying, the only way that Bitcoin can remain bullish in my view, and it is doing it currently, is remaining within this descending wedge formation to eventually break it to the upside, shift momentum back to the upside, and continue this bull market. Therefore, as long as Bitcoin's within this wedge, I'm not necessarily too scared. I'm vigilant, I'm cautiously optimistic, I'm not massively bullish, I'm not buying anything, I'm certainly not buying altcoins. I think the altcoin market looks abysmal at this point, and I think it will look a lot worse than prior cycles, even if Bitcoin does recover fully. I'm not buying, so I'm not sitting here and saying buy, but I'm saying there is optimism to be had here. We're not exactly in the brutal crash that some people think we are in. Just because we've seen a rounding top and a double top here and a breakdown, it doesn't necessarily mean we are in this cataclysmic drop. We do have a glimmer of hope coming from the fact that we have this bullish macro structure, which is exactly what we were doing almost to the T back here in 2024. So there is hope here, and Bitcoin, I think, is still in a position which grants cautious optimism. But just because there is hope on a more medium-term and longer-term level, it doesn't necessarily mean the next few days or even the next couple of weeks will be all golden sunshine. If we actually zoom in to the Bitcoin charts in the 4-hourly here, we can see that within this descending wedge, since around the 11th of March, we had a smaller, again, it's within the larger ascending wedge, so we had a smaller ascending wedge formation here, which actually ended up breaking to the downside just a couple of days ago. We had a volume shift as well, and that breakdown is progressing. So we actually could see a swing all the way down to the lows of the larger descending wedge formation, and also all the way down, as you can see, to the highs of our prior macro consolidation range at around 74,000 before this thing swings to the upside. So don't be too intimidated via Bitcoin entering that middle $70,000 region. If it does, it could be a normal retest of support, and it could be the last retest of support before swinging up. The only thing that would make me genuinely concerned here is an actual break of that level, not testing it. Testing it is fine. A break of that level would be very, very detrimental and probably fatal to the Bitcoin bull market. And if we're flipping back to the daily chart here, we can see the short-term breakdown we saw of that smaller ascending wedge has actually occurred at a double retest and rejection from our RSI momentum indicator resistance. So that further validates potential short-term bearishness. So don't get too concerned if you do see short-term bearishness. It is pretty much expected here as per the short-term breakdown and the rejection of a daily chart RSI resistance. What I want to be seeing for a full recovery on Bitcoin is obviously a break of the wedge itself, but also more specifically a break of the momentum indicator, a break of the RSI resistance line here, and also a break of the Gaussian channel on the daily chart, as that is the level that we rejected from for 3 weeks before breaking our white line, which identified or which signifies our macro support. So getting back above that resistance zone, which we butted heads with before breaking down, would be another step in the right direction. So I'm looking for descending wedge breakout, I'm looking for momentum indicator shift, and I'm looking for a break of that Gaussian channel. If all three of those things occur, I think Bitcoin is pretty much back in the clear. But until then, short-term price action to the downside is probably to be expected. And as long as it remains above that $74,000 region, it's not overly concerning. It's definitely worth being vigilant, and I don't think it's time to buy or anything, but it's not overly concerning. Guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you soon. If you enjoyed that video and you found it useful, I would really appreciate you checking out the Bitunix exchange with my referral link down below. Don't just do it for me, do it for yourself as well. Get on an exchange that's never been hacked before, an exchange that's very, very low in trading fees, an exchange with hundreds of trading pairs, an exchange that's importantly global, non-KYC. You can sign up from anywhere in the world without a VPN, without even verifying your identity if you do not want to. This is the exchange to be on. With my referral link down below, you can get a 15% trading fee discount. Go ahead and use it, help out the channel and help out yourself. Cheers guys, have a good day.